go, Jim. He's dead.
Hello and welcome to Improv Autopsy. I'm your host, Stephen Cadwell. This is episode 2 of my interview with the multifaceted and multi-talented Crystal Haralambou. We'll talk a little bit about teaching improv, our enjoyment of improv, and then Crystal will answer my Proustian questionnaire. If there's anyone you think I should interview, including yourself, drop me a line at improvbrain@gmail.com. In the meantime, please enjoy part 2 of Crystal Haralambou's Improv Autopsy.
So through your journey, how has your enjoyment of watching improv changed, if at all? Is there anything you get out of it now that you didn't then, or if that question made sense?
Yeah. I think that I still love watching it. So if I go to a new city, I'll definitely go on social media and just see if there's an improv team nearby that I can go see, especially in a new city, because I'm like, I've never seen this before. I'd love to see it. But I think, yeah, sure. There's some things that I know, the structures, the games, the bits, if you will. But I still think there's just like a kid in me that just loves to see people having a good time, enjoying and being creative in front of me in the moment. I don't feel like I hate it. I feel like I've heard other seasoned improvisers say that, like, I can't watch it anymore or something. And I'm like, really? I hope I never get to that point, because I think you can learn from watching anything. And even a bad show, you'll learn something. Like, you'll know where it went wrong. You'll know at what point it went wrong or whatnot. And even those shows that you had, you know this probably, but not as much if you were at SAC, but it was just like, there were shows when we were like, we might have more people on stage than we do in the audience, you know? and it's like, maybe that's just part of the journey as an improviser. You always have that at some point, but it's, you know, you're doing it for you. You're doing it for your fellow players in some ways. Like, if we can make each other laugh, we're like, the night was worth it.
Yeah.
But Steven, I think there's still something really special about watching an improv show, because it's like, you really don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And just having that mindset of like, maybe anticipation, like what could happen here, you know? I think that's probably where I'm at when it comes to that. And I have gone to see a lot more traditional theater in the last year and a half. I've made it a point to go, because I've seen so much improv in my life that I have seen less traditional. But even with the traditional, it shows you like theatrical elements that you're like, could you use that in improv? Like, oh yeah, that's like a component. I've never seen that used in an improv show. Like, what if we did use that? And I think it just starts to like spin the artistic wheels, you know? So I would say see shows, see every kind of show, you know, music, dance, whatever, see it. Like, be enriched in your life through the arts in every way. And like, it does not be expensive arts. Just go to the free shows, go to the ones that are $5 and $10. Like, just do it, be around art. I think the more you do it, just like going to the gym, you're going to get more insight to how to create differently and how to think about what you're doing, whether it's improv or writing or whatnot, differently.
Yeah.
So I'm just like that school of thought.
I love that. Yeah, I also love to watch improv as well. And I don't know whether, again, maybe there could be a study on the people that say, oh, I'm at a level where I can't watch certain people or certain groups do improv. I don't know if it's because I taught so many level 2 and level 3 classes that you just start to root for the performers and enjoy their victories, even if a show's going sideways.
Yeah. I think even this last class that I just taught, I remember saying to my supervisor, like, are you sure? Because I know this is going to sound terrible, so I don't know, you maybe want to cut this part, but I was just like, are you sure this group of kids? Because like, they don't fit together. They don't like each other necessarily. They're just the quirkiest kids. And then by the end, I was like, wow, how did this work? I don't even know how it works. It doesn't make sense that it worked. And the fact that they did so well. And also, like, they don't succeed in a lot of other areas. So it was really cool to see them succeed in this area. And I don't know, maybe that's the surprise of improv, that we just, I love that you said root for the performer, because that, I mean, in essence, is really the heart of improv, is that we're rooting for each other. We're making each other look good, all that. And I think when the team feels off is when that's not happening, you know? So,
and it's amazing to see those moments where something happens and you know that something has clicked for that performer. Something just clicked and they're like, it's like, they now they understand a thing that they didn't understand before. You know, they've just been, leveled up. Or in the same vein, it's like, I think maybe their life just changed forever.
Yes. Don't we want that for everyone?
Yeah.
That's great.
I have a little Proust questionnaire type thing, so inside the actor studio type of questions for you.
Okay.
And your answers can be as short or as long as you want. These might be a little deeper, but they don't have to be, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Crystal, how do you get into the proper headspace to play?
Sometimes for me, it's like, I don't have a ritual, and I know some performers do, but for me, it's probably like just getting to a place where I'm not thinking about anything that has to be done. So like if I can really push all the things that are in my life that are requesting my time and energy and thought, just pushing that away. Some of the ways I can do that is just playing music, high energy music, maybe even with no lyrics, just like pop music with no lyrics. But sometimes with music with lyrics, it's fine. Just something that will get me out of my traditional daily mindset.
Uh-huh.
And then I feel like for me, it was always connecting with the team backstage. I know some people are like, I don't warm up or whatever. But for me, it was always like, we have to connect. We've all been in these different environments all day. We have to like come back to a space where we're looking each other in the eye and we're like touching and we're like hearing each other before we go do that in front of an audience. So I felt like that was a huge, important thing. And whenever I ran the theater, I was like, do this. You need to warm up. It may not have been everybody's method, but I felt like for me, it had to be.
Did you find it harder to disconnect from the daily grind when part of the daily grind was the business of the theater?
100%. I think there were some shows that I even just chose not to be in the show because not right before, but it was like for the run of shows where I was like, I will be the tech because I know this is going to require me to think about tickets and electronic tickets and opening the theater and closing the theater and making sure we have enough seats and blah, 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 all the things. And that I was just like, I'm going to tech, you guys be in the show. And I offered that a lot because I knew I needed to like distance myself. I couldn't get out of the headspace between switching it that quickly.
Yeah.
And then there was a couple festivals where I did that, where it's like, I will direct this show and I'll sit in the audience, but I'm not going to be in it. Because I don't know, just whatever was going on in my life at the time was just too much. And I needed to have a little bit of space where I missed it, so I don't want to portray the wrong thing here because I think my heart is to perform. My first love would be to perform. But realizing that like the show is the important thing here and to take myself out of it might be the best thing. So I think that sounds cheesy. But it just felt like for the nature of the show and for the sanity of the other people in the show, maybe it's best that I'm just like on the outside of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So in the headspace I'm in right now, it's better for me to be up here in the tech booth or wherever and watch it and be able to get caught up in what you're doing and allow you through your performance to take me out of this headspace versus me trying to get out of it myself so that I can be helpful and add to what you're doing.
Yes. And also sometimes the show needed an outside critical eye.
Sure,
if that makes
sure.
sense. Just so like to say, I think actors can come off the stage and be like, that was amazing. And it probably was amazing if they feel that way. But just having that outside critical eye of just like, this is the way we can tweak it. This is the way we can fix some things. I think that is also something that would maybe have taken me out. But I absolutely agree with what you're saying. And I would get lost in their performance. I feel like even if I was off stage, those fellow performers were so talented that I would find that it was like such a fun evening for me to enjoy their performance, And,
yeah.
And sometimes if we had a couple teams performing, you would find me before warm up in the back of the theater just watching somebody else's team because it was still just like that feeling of like, holy crap, this is so special. Like, I can't believe the theater is full. The lights are out. People are on stage. They don't need me to facilitate anything. They're doing it themselves. What a nice moment to just revel in this, that it's working.
Yeah.
And I think that those moments were sweet too, just to be in the back doing that. So. And
what I'm hearing, and when you're saying the second part of that, in terms of someone who can give notes and direct and not be in the group, is also to kind of bring that back around to what you'd said about bait, is preventing some of that from happening within that group. Is you're like, I need to be outside the group to be able to give these notes. So because if I'm inside the group, then it creates a strange tension within the group because I'm also in the group, and then maybe motives are questioned or whatever in terms of why did Crystal give us that note? It's just because she wanted more stage time versus someone who's a little more distant and can be a little more objective in terms of that. Or is that accurate?
I think it's somewhat accurate. I think that because I was just the leader overall, it was always like somebody was probably questioning my motive in some ways. So that's hard. It's hard to get away from that, especially if you want to continue to be a performer, because yeah, just people question authority. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. And it doesn't matter how much of like servant leadership or whatever you buy into as far as leadership is concerned, it's still going to happen because people are human. And so I think one of the hard lessons I learned overall was just like, not everyone's going to like you. I know that's something I should have learned a long time ago, but I think that my personality tends to be optimistic. It tends to be outgoing and sometimes gregarious and such. And so if somebody's just objectively not, are opposed to me, and I find that it's like, it's hard for me to wrestle with as an artist, as a person, all those things. And so I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that's where my actor personality comes into play a little bit, and I have to always be aware of that, to not take it personally that we're running a business, all the blah blah blah, all the things that you're supposed to say to yourself. But it is personal. Improv is so personal. It is so close to my heart. It's so close. The people in the room are so close to you. You love those people as people, and you love those people as performers. And so that is the tension you hold, is that when should you be part of the team? When should you not be part of the team? How can your voice be heard? How can you make it more echoed so that it can be heard? I mean, all of those things are things that I think you wrestle with as a leader, as an owner of a theater,
yeah,
and also as an artist.
Again, things that I was not thinking about, when I was just a performer back in the day, outside of my vision, the area of vision. And it stands to reason that this art form, where one of the hurdles that a lot of people have to get through is being able to be more emotional on stage, or to let their emotions show more, to be more vulnerable. If being vulnerable is an outcome of doing more improv, I guess it stands to reason that people's feelings are going to get hurt.
Yeah, and they're involved. They're very much involved.
Yeah. What is your favorite get for?
Like asking for suggestions? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, what's your favorite ask?
I don't know if I have a favorite. I tend to ask a more obscure thing, like, what happened to you in third grade that affected your life forever? Or something like that.
I love that.
Something like, yeah, or something like, what's at the very bottom of your closet? Like, something like that. So I like those very specific ask fors, but sometimes they can be trapping too. So, but as far as the more general one, I love just asking, can I have a relationship between two people? Because I feel like that already puts us in the heart of the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of tied to that question is, what is your least favorite suggestion to get? What's your least favorite one to hear shouted by the audience?
Oh gosh. The suggestion of a store, or maybe just like something that's kind of crass or something. I think that mentality of SAC has always been with me. So just to try to like play, not just play to the top of your intelligence, but also like play in an environment where everyone can enjoy it, has always been part of my schooling in improv. So yeah, I guess maybe something that's just like inappropriate, like blatantly inappropriate. I think that always puts me in an odd position. Like, okay, any other suggestions? So I think that would be something that I would hate to get.
Crystal, can you describe your onstage persona? How is onstage Crystal different than real life Crystal, if at all?
Oh, I think my onstage persona is a lot more quiet, confident, if that makes sense. Maybe because I'm playing characters more often than not, and my regular persona is just like always slightly insecure. At least slightly, but maybe more. But yeah, I think it's definitely, if I'm playing with people I know and also feel like I can jump into a character and they'll ride with it, I think that, yeah, it's definitely has way more confidence and maybe more playful even. I think in my daily life, I tend to let the cares of the world sort of weigh me down. And I think on stage, I try to push it away. And I think that's my best acting, is when I can actually get rid of it and be in the moment.
Yeah.
I think probably just like anyone else, I think when you get wrapped up into your head and you're not present, then you sort of miss the action of the scene and you're not as helpful to the other performers. And so, yeah, I think my best self on stage would be like this confident Crystal that is able to just play with the goofiest, weirdest, surprising even to me kind of characters. And then also that is listening and attentive and present with everyone. I find that in real life, sometimes I jump back to the, oh, what am I going to say next in this conversation, instead of really intently listening like we're supposed to.
Yeah, as if every conversation was a job interview.
Yeah.
Oh, what do they want me to say? What inspires you on stage?
I think what inspires me is when somebody sees something from a different perspective, or they do the unexpected. So we get a suggestion that seems very typical, and then they go somewhere very different. But because we've worked together, you just know. You're like, I know what they're doing. I spend enough time with them that I'm like, I think they're doing this. Like, let's go support that, And I think that's when I feel like, oh man, that was like somewhere I did not think that suggestion was going to go. Then I definitely feel inspired by that. I think I feel inspired when it's, or the story, you could say like a narrative or a long form that you think is going to go in a certain direction, but then we're all sort of surprised by where it goes. And then you're just like, wow, we have the capacity to do that. That was in us somehow. Like that, I don't know. That feels inspiring. I love it. Even when somebody goes to jump off of something or fall backwards, and then all of a sudden we're all there to catch them. I mean, I'm like, whoa, we are all here. We all are here right now. And we're all paying attention, and we're all like supporting each other physically, like genuinely physically supporting each other. This is amazing. So that feels really good too. It's just like, I think it's when we sort of do the things that we don't know we're capable of. That's when I feel most inspired. So
I love it.
Yeah.
The opposite of that, then what shuts you down or takes you out of it on stage?
The contrived stuff, the little shticky kind of stuff where someone's like, oh, this scene's not working. Let me go make it into a commercial. Or this scene is not, you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I know exactly what you mean.
Or, they're not trusting the process. So I think a scene can fall flat, and then we all of a sudden are like, oh, we got to save this. We got to save the scene. And then, we're just not trusting that there could even be something a couple scenes later that could fix that. Or
right.
A racist comment will definitely make me feel incredibly awkward and compassionate towards the audience, and then it will take me totally out of the scene. Or something like that. Something highly offensive, I should say.
Right.
Where I'm like, this is not serving everyone. This is not. And then I've had that happen where something like that has happened, and then one of the other actors, and particularly this one was like a non-white actor, called it out, and it made such a comic relief for the whole room. And it was just like such a lovely, like, yeah, we see you and we raise the bar. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. And it was just like such a lovely response. But the moment that it happened, the initial moment is like, oh my gosh, I got to worry now about every single person that paid for this ticket tonight, and I can't be in this scene anymore. And so I think that would definitely remove me from what's happening.
Yeah, I can only imagine even more so as a leader in the theater, because suddenly you're flashing forward to the emails you're getting tomorrow instead of being in the scene.
Or a public post or anything. It could have been on video. Somebody could have videoed it. It just like, you never know in this day and age what could be the thing that brings you down. So, I mean, on that note, Stephen, I would say that improv is such a it feels fragile to me in that sense, that it is an art form that really could be destroyed easily. So it's like you almost have to have people that are invested in cultivating the care of it while you're doing it. Because even there was a time, I think, towards a few years ago, particularly towards the Me Too movement, where a lot of stuff was coming out around the country about people taking advantage of this vulnerable community of improvisers and making choices around particularly women, but other people too in those communities. And I just think that it seems so somewhat scary as a leader, and that you're just like, I have to protect this at all costs, but was never really my job to protect it. It was really everyone's job. And so in that way, improv feels vulnerable and fragile to me. And that's something that maybe happens in every artistic community. But for me, I felt it very close to my heart. And the sense of just like, you have to be careful to keep the perspective of like, we're here to care for each other, to honor each other, to make each other look good, like all the things we know and believe about improv, but also like, we really do have to live this out, or it could be destroyed in a hot second, And so I think that was always like the fragility that you carry as a leader as well.
Were there guardrails that you had in place, or systems that you either did or would have in place now to aid in protecting the community and the art form?
Well, we did have very clear values. This was probably before we realized we needed even more specific values, but we had very clear values that everyone who came in, did know and recognize, and I even signed maybe a commitment to it. We had them, visually on the wall, those kinds of things. It's just like any other organization committed to a mission, I believe, or, even a job. But also there were things like, no leader should be in a dating relationship with any of the people that are on their team. And then sometimes it got hairy. Like somebody was like, well, I really want to date this person. And then we'd be like, well, then you can't be a leader. And they're like, okay, I won't be a leader. And then that team would not have a leader. So it was like sometimes we were shooting ourselves in the foot, but we still followed them. We followed those rules. They were hard. We followed them. And they were not absolute. You know, obviously people are going to be people, and stuff probably maybe even happened that I didn't know about, which is probably a gift to me in some ways. But like people are going to be whoever they are. I just think the fragility of this art form is something that has to be fiercely protected by everyone involved.
Yeah.
Or it can go away really easily.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm alone on that. I'd love to hear from other people that echo that. But I mean, we never had, to my knowledge, some of the same things that happened around. But I think that the fact that it was happening in other improv spaces made me super aware that like we've got to be careful with this.
Just another thing in terms of like getting out of your head to play as well.
Oh, sorry, I went way off on that one. I apologize.
Well, no, I mean, I love it. I think you're right, and all of that are things that, especially as a theater owner or theater leader, that you carry with you all the time that other people probably don't even realize.
Yeah.
In your estimation, what makes a good scene partner?
In my estimation, a scene partner is good if they don't have their own agenda. They are with you. They're building brick by brick with you.
Yeah.
I think that if they're playful and open to something that is not typically who they are, I think they're present. They're connected to you. You can sometimes look people in the eye and know if they are with you, right? Like, you know if they're with you or present or thinking about the same thing you're thinking of in that moment. And yeah, I feel like the best scene partners have been ones that I've been connected to, or they surprise me somehow. And I'm like, whoa, you were paying attention to that, or you're right. Like that's where the story needed to go. Or I typically think a good scene partner is someone better than me. If that makes sense, like someone that's going to make me rise to the occasion in some ways. So I don't know. That probably sounded weird, but I just wanted to say that because I think there are hugely talented people in this field. And whether I'm sitting in the audience or next to them on stage, I feel like that's such an honor to see it, to witness their talent in action. And if they're my scene partner, I feel lucky.
Yeah.
I feel super lucky.
If you had a time machine and you could go back and visit Crystal as she's auditioning for that group after level 1 or level 2, whichever it was, is there any advice that you would give your younger self?
Yes. Well, Stephen, I went to, before the pandemic, so 2018, that summer I went to IO's intensive, their summer intensive. And 2019, I went to their advanced one. And I remember in 2018 being there and going, I was there for 6 weeks. And I just remember walking in that space and feeling like a little bit of regret, because I felt like, God, what would it have been like to have been entrenched in such a creative community like this? Like to be a receiver sort of it instead of the leader of it. Oh, this is going to sound so selfish. I'm sorry. But it was just this selfish moment I had while I was there. And I remember feeling like the buzz of people going and coming from classes and workshops, or buzz of them going to shows. There was multiple shows in their theater at the time. And I just remember feeling like, oh, what if I had come earlier to this environment, or if I had entrenched myself into an environment that was like this, how would my life look different? And I don't know how it would look different. And I shared that with a friend when I got back, and they were like, well, Crystal, you created community for other people. And I was sort of shocked by that. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I had not thought of that. But, I think if I could say to that girl back then, I would say, like, do it all the time. Just entrench yourself in it as much as you can. And I don't know if that meant like traveling to Orlando or Miami or wherever I could find improv, or if it really meant like moving to another place where I could just like live off of it. But I would have said that to my younger self. And I would even have said to a younger version of that from that audition, I studied traditional theater, but I did not see the value not only as an actor, performer, but as just like we both said, like to your whole life, the way that improv changes your whole life and your perspective. And I would have said to my graduating high school self, girl, get involved in improv. Whatever you do, you can do anything else in your life. Like, that's fine. You can go work at a bank or something. But like literally do not abandon this part. You need to do this every every week, if not every other day or whatever. I would have said that to myself because I see the tremendous value. And I say that to even younger students now. I'm like, guys, if you're having fun doing this, you can do it in high school, you can do it in college, you can do it, I'm telling them, or you can do it with your family. You guys are going to have Thanksgiving together, teach them this game, or whatever. So I'm constantly like trying to integrate it into other people's lives.
Yeah.
As my legacy, I guess. But yeah, I think I would have said that because there's something about being around like-minded people that has to be just a huge part of our growth.
Yeah.
So,
and I would agree with whoever told you that you were creating that for other people, because I definitely believe that you were creating that thing that you craved. And even if you weren't able to take full advantage of it yourself, you created it for other people, which is an amazing gift.
Thank you. Thank you.
What is your favorite type of character to play?
I think it's somebody that definitely has like a physical difference than me. Something physically is different than the way that I move in the world.
Sure.
And maybe sounds different, but that's more of the exterior, I would say. But that's probably where it starts for me, is the outside in. And then the inside is sort of shaped by that. And then that inside is sort of the story of this person evolves. And I didn't expect it. Not that I was expecting anything per se, but like just that, what? Like when you look back and you're like, that was so dumb. Oh my God, that was so dumb. It was crazy dumb, crazy, so fun. And like that, I think that's when I feel like it's the best character, because I'm like, who is that person? But I sort of know them. In a weird way, So I think that's where it is, because it's like, that's where you're really playing. You didn't plan it. You don't know what's going to come out of you. And then it does. And you're like, how in the heck is that inside me? But
that's one of the things I love about improv, is you can play against type.
Yeah.
Where maybe not so much in traditional theater, depending on, where you are doing it. The first guy that I ever did improv with, Brian, that started the college group with me, is a big guy. He looks like a bouncer, and like an intimidating bouncer, not just a guy that could be a bouncer. He's tall, he's broad-shouldered, and he told me once, I don't know if he remembers this, I'll have to ask him at some point, but he told me once that he enjoyed on stage playing small people because it's not something he could experience in real life. So he enjoyed doing that on stage and playing those characters on stage because it allowed him to experience something that he couldn't experience in real life.
Yeah, like totally different. Yeah, just like outside of yourself.
Yeah.
That's great. That's so great.
If you could do a scene with anyone alive, who would it be?
Oh my gosh. Are you kidding? Oh my God, that's such a good question. I don't know. If I could do a scene with anyone, oh my gosh, I would love to just have Tina Fey and Amy Poehler over, and any of Rachel Dratch. All of them could just come hang out at my house in Tampa. If you're listening, please come. Yes, I would love for that group of women, and Kirsten, all of them, to just come and do a ladies' night. Just play improv in my living room. I think just like something about their friendship with each other, the time that they were together on SNL, I don't know, it just made you fall for them. And they're so hugely talented but also approachable.
Yeah.
I think that they would be really fun to do scenes with. Gosh, let me think. I know I'm leaving people out.
Okay.
I know there's
it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list.
There's a girl that's now a stand-up comedian, but I can't imagine that she didn't do improv at some point. But her name is Rose Matafeo. And she is so raw and real in the moment. And she's also been in some sitcoms too. But I think she's coming to New York, which is sold out, by the way, so don't worry about it if you're listening. But yeah, she is fantastic. She has such a fresh voice, and she really does kind of bring a feminine voice to the stage, but it's not self-depreciating. It's more of just her telling her perspective on everything around her, and it's just a fresh, lovely voice. And I think she would be really fun to meet and also do improv with. I can't imagine that she's never done it, and I think it would be cool to know her as well. So
love it.
That's such a good question.
And I will throw this out there as well, that one of the ASCATs you can find on YouTube at the UCB New York space, I don't know if it's one of the spaces they still have, but where they brought back, or I don't know if they brought back or they were just there, but Amy Poehler was there and some of the Matts and the other founders of UCB. But Amy Poehler was the one that I thought just stood out. And this was, I think she was already in SNL and stuff, so of course she's talented, but even in that, I was like, oh, she is the one that to me is standing out in terms of just doing absolutely amazing improv right now. And everyone else, not like anyone's doing terrible, but Amy Poehler I was like, I'm absolutely amazed. And that's just, a recorded performance. I can only imagine what it was live.
Yeah, I remember that one. I will say, like, there's this little part of me, and maybe other people feel this too, but I just recently watched, like, the SNL movie, and was it called Saturday Night?
I think so.
If it was called. Okay, it was called Saturday Night. I just watched it, but, like, there is this part of me that when I see that, I just think these were just some kids doing like what they did. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't, and I feel like that about that generation because I think had I moved to Chicago, I would have been closer to that generation in classes even. And I just think like, they were just like people like us, like they were just improvisers just doing their craft and obviously got serious for them eventually or whatever. Not that we're not doing serious stuff. I just meant like, in a different way.
Yeah.
But I think it's just sometimes the humility of those first starts is just so endearing to me. And I think, you just don't know what you're creating when you're creating it. You're kind of like, I'm just doing my craft. I'm just doing my thing, the thing that I love to do. But you don't realize what it could become. And even with the theater, the box theater, when I was gathering those friends that first year, I didn't know I was going to be doing this for 11 years. I had no idea. I just was like, I just like doing this and I like these people. And I would say that to anyone that's listening. It's like, it really is like as easy as saying, I want to try something. And then you just never know how it's going to evolve. And I think that happened for that group of actors too. They probably didn't realize how it would evolve, but it did for them. And in many ways, our own regular everyday lives are evolving too. And hopefully all of us that are improvisers are evolving more towards the artistic, but it's just like an echoing of that philosophy that like just take a step in faith, just try something that you've maybe always wanted to try and you just never know where you'll end up. And I don't know, it sounds super simple, but it is the truth. It is the truth of our lives, just something to think about.
Yeah. Okay, so on the same vein, if you could do a scene with anyone who is no longer with us, who would it be?
Ooh.
And that doesn't have to be recently departed. Anyone in the pantheon of people who are deceased.
Oh, gosh. Oh, Lucille Ball. She would be... I don't know. Maybe definitely Lucille Ball.
I love it.
Okay, yeah, she was just so playful.
Yeah.
I think that would be my person.
I would pay to see that. If you could do a scene with anyone fictional, who would it be?
I think Seinfeld, the cast is so fun. I would love to do it with those characters. But I don't know if that counts. Does it need to be like somebody in a book?
No, that's fine. No, that counts.
That's a good answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like the not the cast, but the characters on Seinfeld is what you're saying.
The characters, yes, and then they always have to be people from my favorite shows. The other one would be I'm a huge fan of Gilmore Girls. I'm not ashamed of it. I will admit it. But the other one is the same. Palladino's also produced Marvelous Miss Maisel, in which case I would love to perform with any of those characters. I think those characters are so fun, and I think to improvise with any of them would be also such a treat.
Yeah, the last person I asked had a cartoon character as an answer, so there's zero, no holds barred.
So creative! That's so creative. Like Goofy? Yeah, Goofy would be so fun.
I don't know. I think you do a lot of heavy lifting with Goofy, but...
It would be all physical comedy. Oh, that's great.
What do you find most helpful from the booth?
Oh, like as the person, as an extension of the performance?
Yeah. Or well, I mean, however you want to interpret that.
Well, when I was in Chicago, I felt like something that I liked was that there would often be an interaction between the players and the person in the booth. Like they would actually address the person there at the opening of the show, or they would stop and ask questions even. Like they were just so much a part of the show. And that really impacted me because I know that the person doing tech is part of the show, but I just felt like that inclusion, the visual inclusion from the audience was so touching to just see that, and maybe that brings it together. Like this is an ensemble. These people performing are not just alone. There's this other person. And I think that sort of camaraderie with each other is helpful to see. But as the person running tech, I would say the most important piece of it is really being a listener, because you have to be ready for anything. You have to be a listener, and you can't be distracted at all. And I mean, you are just a silent player in so many ways.
Extra tough sometimes to have your ears on when you're also preparing for the next moment that you know is coming in however many minutes or however many seconds you know that. So you got to prepare either music or lights or something, and you know something's coming, but you also have to be listening intently, and it's really multitasking.
Yeah, it's like both parts of your brain in some ways. And I think at SAC they had like a mic in the back, so like
Yeah.
even that person could be like the voice of God or something, and that's even cool. Like that's that in that way they're not silent, but yeah, you're right. You have to queue up and also be ready for anything in the moment. So yeah, both things.
What is the least helpful from the booth?
To upstage to upstage or miss the cue. Oh gosh, if you miss the cue, I think that's probably least helpful because it's like you are busy, but like that could have been the best ending for the show, or that could have been the best closeout for the scene. So yeah, I would be like, I think that's probably the least helpful, if
Yeah.
I'm honest.
I agree 100%. And I also, when you're in a place where you have good text, you kind of get used to it, because the thing that I laugh about in that, and again, I agreeing with you 100%, is that also in that moment, it's like if I'm on stage and the blackout's missed, for some reason, I feel compelled to keep going instead of just walking off stage.
Yeah.
It could still be the end, but no,
Yeah.
the lights didn't go down, so I'm going to keep talking and ruin my
Yes.
own ending. And then blame the tech later.
Yes, in post.
Yeah. Why didn't you black it out? Well, you kept talking.
Aw. Collaboration that never ends.
Yes. Other than laughter, what audience sound do you revel in?
Oh gosh. Sometimes just the movement of them leaning forward, but
Oh, I love that.
yeah, could just be that. But I think like just an awe or something too. If you hear the audience breathe and they're like responding, I think that's probably what I would revel in. Because sometimes I've seen an improv show where I'm like tears are coming down, but then the very next second I'm laughing. So I mean, it doesn't happen often, but when it does, you're like, gosh, that's the show you remember. You may not remember everything about it, but you're like, oh, the microwave show. Oh my God, that show is so good. Like you just remember it because it was just that moving, just as moving as any other theatrical piece. But I would say that like just watching their physical body, like lean in to watch, it's just as important, if not more important in some ways than the laughter.
This isn't actually on here, but what you were saying made me think of this. Is there some laughter you appreciate more than others?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Well, yeah, like there's like genuine laughter. There's people that laugh because it's awkward, and there's people that laugh because, oh, that was cute, that was funny. But then there's like something that's like an uproar, it's like your whole physicality is responding to it. Or even laughter that just like, I mean, I think sometimes looking at fellow players and you're like, holy, what happened here? Like, it is holy in some ways, like something got out of them and they're like, they can't stop laughing, or they're like crying laughing or something. There is something special about that. That's probably the kind I really love. And I don't look for it that often, but when it happens, it's so surprising.
What is the worst venue you've played in?
Oh my gosh, the worst venue. Wow. When I was with Bait early on, we performed at this it was like somebody bought a space in Ybor City that was supposed to be a store / coffee shop / I don't know what else. And it had a little stage in the back of the place. It felt like I was going to see a fortune teller. Because I think that's the best way to explain it, because everything about this place felt like a bazaar in some other foreign country or something. It was just like very, very like eclectic. There were chimes everywhere and like flowy, colorful curtains. And it was just like a random stage in the back with like just foldable chairs. And it wasn't terrible in the sense of probably outside somewhere with really bad sound quality would be worse, but it was just like so random. And I remember almost feeling like nervous to invite people to it because I'm like, yeah, it's in the back of a store. We're performing in the back of a store.
I promise you were allowed to be there.
Yeah, and also like those were some of our first shows. I think they didn't charge us, and they may have let us keep all the money. I don't know what it was, but it was like some of the first shows that we got to perform together, and it was like kind of your mom and dad were there, and that's it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. It was just like a weird venue all around. Yeah, that was just weird. And it's no longer there, by the way. It may have even had the word bizarre in its name, actually. Because it was so bizarre. Oh, boy. Good times.
What, in your mind, is it just the feeling of the place that made it that way? Or is it the fact that it was cramped? Or The fact that it was so informal with the folding chairs, or is there anything in particular that you think made it feel that way for you?
I don't know. I think so. That was like kind of my first experience, and the only thing that I had seen other than that with improv was probably just being at SAC. So I saw like a real, like not a real theater. I shouldn't. It was a theater, theatrical space, and then obviously I had had experience in traditional theater, so I had seen regular theaters. But this was just kind of like they let us do a show there, and so like, we were just like in the back end. And like, hopefully someone's like there to buy some incense, but like, they'll be like, oh, what's that, a show? Oh, I'm going to see it. You know, like, it was just like so rando. Oh my God. I don't want to feel ungrateful because those moments were very important, but at the same time, it was just like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably where I was like, are we seriously pursuing this craft? Because we're just here in this weird, it wasn't anything in particular, and maybe it's even better than some of the stages that it could have been, but there's just like a funny space. I don't know.
Some spaces you're interrupted by the door opening and closing, and here it was just the rattling of the beads.
Yeah. And the coffee machine, which, I mean, that's probably typical, but yeah, the cappuccino machine or whatever was loud. So
What is the best note you've ever received?
I mean, this is not a note. So I don't know. I'm probably changing your question. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was going to say the first day I was at IO, they had us do like an orientation. And one of the girls, Gretchen, that's on Devil's Daughter, the team there, she said something like, quiet the critical middle schooler in you and just like play. It was something along those lines. I'm probably misquoting it, but it was along those lines. And I just remember that it wasn't a note, but it was a piece of advice. And it sort of stuck with me because I feel like if anyone's critical, it's middle schoolers.
Yeah.
So accurately, that's what I've heard, they're so accurately critical because they actually hit the nail on the head. But it is true. Like that little voice is always in our head. And especially in improv, we're like, oh, I could have done that better. I should have done that. Or why did I do that? Or that was dumb. And it's constantly like that little voice in our head and sort of on our shoulder talking to us. And I just remember hearing that and just being like, that is such helpful advice for me to know that. And to even like maybe even say it to myself before I go into a show, like, you don't get to talk during this time or something. Like, I just felt like that image of even my middle school self of who I am, it was just really helpful for me to hear that. I don't know if I've been given a note that really stands out, but that was a piece of advice that stood out for me.
Oh, no, that's great. And that's 100% the kind of thing I'm going for. So the other side of that coin, then, what is the least helpful note or words of quote-unquote wisdom that you've received or could conceive of in this moment right now?
I don't know if I remember like the worst note, but I do remember there were times where I felt bad after a show and after a choice, because the person was targeting me and not, like, it ended up not being about the essence of the scene or the craft of the scene. It ended up being more personal.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably something we all struggle with. But if you can just take a breath before you give the note and really ask yourself, does this support the person and the craft of improvisation, or is it just really going to hurt this person? I think that it's hard to do, but it's a distinction it's so much more helpful if you're like, oh, can you imagine this scene if we actually did this instead? Okay. And then like, how could you consider that next time when we're doing the scene or a scene similar or something like that? I don't know. Versus like, man, you really suck tonight or something like that. Like they were just like sort of at you. And not that anyone's ever said that to me per se, but like, I think it does go back to the idea of, are you on the same team or are you guys against each other? And so you have to look at how you handle how you criticize each other. And is it going to help build up the team eventually with whatever that criticism is? Or is it really just going to end up hurting someone? I think that's the perspective.
Yeah. So this is related. This is kind of outside of the questionnaire, but I didn't ask it earlier and probably should have. What do you feel the role of the post-show discussion is, and what's the best way to go about that in your experience and opinion?
Yeah, one time I took a workshop with somebody at the Sarasota Improv Festival from Miami. Gosh, I feel a little old here because I'm not remembering everybody's name. And I remember he took us through, at the end of his workshop, he just said, we're going to do a love circle. I'm sure you've done it. Probably other people have done it. But that was my first time doing it. And he just made us say, like, look around the circle and say to somebody, like, I loved when you did blah, blah, blah. And you just say that something that actually, or I loved when this happened. I loved, etc. from the class. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this is such a great way to end a class. This is a great way to end a show. And I think if you're asking me at this point in my life, I would say at the end of the show, it would be probably really great if you could do that. A love circle for 2 minutes, just have people look each other in the eye and say something that's helpful to anyone else in the circle. Just like look around. You can say as many things as you can in that 3-minute time or something. Just anything that worked, that you loved, that you enjoyed about the show. It could even be like, I love working with you. I mean, it could be something simple. I think that's the place it could be most helpful after the show. And then maybe the best time to revisit like more critical thought would be like at the next rehearsal. I don't know that it's helpful, and people will disagree with me on that. I get it. But like, I don't know if it's totally helpful to pick the whole show apart right after the show, especially if it felt like a good show. So I don't know. Everyone has their different context for that, because sometimes those people are not going to be performing ever again, or they're not going to perform together for a while. And so maybe there's a way to we'll do criticism for 2 minutes and then we'll go to the love circle and that's how we'll end or something. But I do think there needs to be like an acknowledgement after the show of what actually worked. And it's worth taking the moment for that, because it's hard work sometimes to do improv. And sometimes you're like, that was tough, or that crowd was tough. Like, what actually worked about this? And I think it's probably really helpful to walk away from it saying like, yeah, that was just tonight. It'll never happen again. But these are things that worked, and then revisit those other things later. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I love that. And Richard brought up, when I was talking to Richard, just kind of the lack of in post kind of maybe it's the paradigm we're most familiar with, he and I, but the lack of the sort of structure or anything in post to capture those things that worked and do kind of a quick analysis of that in order to, how do we duplicate this? If this was the thing we liked, if this is the thing that felt great, what got us there? How do we recapture that? Not the same thing, not the same laugh or the same experience, but that feeling that led to good work. What was the groundwork that was laid there, and how do we do that again?
Yeah.
It's, human nature to be like, well, these are all the things that didn't work. It's like, well, okay, great. Now we know. We know because we were there.
Like crap.
We felt it.
But
yeah, let's focus on the things that worked. Like you're saying, like, let's name them. What are the things that worked? Because maybe they were fleeting. Maybe it was lightning and it's not going to strike again. But maybe that's something like, oh, you know what? This worked because let's go back to pre-show when we really did connect as a group. And that led to this moment where we were really connected on stage. And so let's do this thing beforehand again and see what that leads to.
I do think there's something that's edifying about just giving them some positive feedback at the end, because that voice is still in your head. Like, as soon as the show's over, that little middle schooler is going to come back and tell you all the things you did wrong. And if you at least have something resonating in your mind about what you did right, even as a team, that's going to fight that voice a little bit. So I think that's important.
I agree 100%. If there were an Academy Awards for everything improv, what would you be nominated for?
Oh boy. Academy Award? That's pretty big, Stephen.
Yeah. Or if you want to think of it this way, if improv were a high school, and let's be honest, it kind of is.
It kind of is.
What superlative would you be given?
Probably most likely to play a fun character, maybe. That's probably generous, but yeah, that would be something I would say.
If you're remembered 100 years from now for something you did in improv, what would you want it to be? Or something improv related?
Oh my gosh, I love that. The kind of legacy I would want to leave for improv, it would be to just say to the world that we just, it's not original, Stephen, but the idea, nothing is planned. Nothing is planned. Our whole lives are not planned. And improv gives us the tools to deal with that, with the unplanned, unexpected twists and turns of our life. And even if you never want to perform, I just feel like I would want the world to know that it is such an asset, such a tool to understand how improvisation works, because it will be your compass to navigate those unplanned things in your life. And I say this to myself, actually, because because I forget, but I don't mean to say it's like a spiritual guide or anything. I think you need that in your life. I think you need other things in your life. You need love. You need so many things. But I just think it's a tool to be able to navigate the unknown, the dark part that your ship of life is kind of headed into. And when you can't see what's ahead, it will remind you to take a step in faith and to trust the process and to look around you and invest in the people that are in your life, because that's the most valuable thing, and to put emphasis on that, and then to embrace the unexpected, but also to delight in the moments of joy, all of that. I think that's what I would want them to know, because I don't think that I've brought too much originality to improvisation, and maybe not yet, but I do think it is for every age and every person. I think that it doesn't matter your personality, but it does require an open mind, and it does require a kind of an open spirit and open eyes and ears, but it does have the capacity to change everyone. And I think that's, I don't know, I believe that in my guts.
I love it. And I would say this, I think that in a dry and thirsty land, water is what's needed. It doesn't have to be LaCroix. So I wouldn't beat yourself up for if you're thinking that you didn't bring anything original, because every time you perform, it's original. Everything is original, 100%. So on that level, you're definitely bringing things original. And you also brought some water to a dry and thirsty land in Tampa. And, it's changed the landscape because of it.
Oh, thank you.
And on that note, in my mind, like if we're thinking yearbook, you're in a like safari gear with a machete, and you're like most likely to blaze her own trail. That's maybe the one I would give you.
Oh my gosh, Stephen, these are such healing words to my heart. I think, I think I've gotten through the breakup of, not having the theater anymore and such, but like, there's still like definitely, some woundedness in my heart. And just hearing those two things is so healing. Thank you so much. That really just heals my soul. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm grateful for you. And I mean, you played a huge role in Kayla's life, especially, being in Dear Aunt Gertrude, and I got to see and even play it with you guys sometimes and see a lot of those shows. And even though we haven't talked in I don't know how long, I'm glad that you're in my my circle of friends.
Yes, this is lovely. This has been such a good time, and just like even reminder of what is good. And I don't know, I think there is that camaraderie with improv, like that we just become friends for life in some ways, because we know and believe some of the same things, it's a like-mindedness.
Yes.
So
the group mind is real.
It is.
That's it for my interview with Crystal Haralambou. Check the show notes for more information about Crystal and all she's currently up to. If you're enjoying the show, leave me a review wherever you're listening and help spread the word. As always, thanks for listening to Improv Autopsy.